I came to my best friend's Luna ceremony to be her biggest supporter. She was finally meeting her fated mate, the one she'd called a true alpha king. But then, he stepped into the moonlight. My world didn't just shatter, my very soul froze. It was him, the stranger from the woods, the one whose life I had saved just last night. Chapter 1, Blood and Moonlight. The dispatch call. A ghost of a voice crackled through the radio. An animal attack. Animal attacks weren't new, not out here, where the city gives up and the forest takes over. But this felt different. The air, thick, heavy with the scent of ozone and something coppery. Blood. I found him near an ancient oak tree, its branches like skeletal fingers against the bruised twilight sky. He wasn't a man, not yet. He was a wolf. But not just any wolf, a beast from nightmares. Impossibly huge. His fur, the color of a starless midnight, was matted with mud and so much blood. My training kicked in, because my sanity threatened to check out. 1 breath, 2. To herself, a calming mantra. You're a paramedic, Arayna. You save lives. It doesn't matter if the patient has 2 legs or 4. Easy now, I whispered, my voice small in the sudden silence of the woods. I'm not going to hurt you, he growled, a low, rumbling threat that vibrated right through the soles of my boots. His eyes. Oh, goddess, his eyes weren't animal. They were gold, molten gold, filled with a sharp, cutting intelligence, and so much pain. He was hurt badly. A deep gash ran along his side, raw and angry. I had to clean it, had to stop the bleeding, had to do something. My hands, usually so steady, trembled as I reached into my med kit. I worked quickly, my motions automatic, because if I stopped to think about it, if I truly processed the sheer size of him, I'd run. He watched my every move, his head low, but he didn't snap. He just watched. Then it happened. A shudder racked his massive frame. A sound tore from his throat, not a growl. A pained groan, horrifyingly human. Bones cracked, a sickening snap, a wet tear as fur receded into skin. Muscle and bone twisted, reforming. I stumbled back, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. The monster was gone, and in his place was a man, naked, covered in blood and dirt. His broad chest and shoulders gleamed with sweat in the moonlight, and those same golden eyes, his eyes, found mine. And then I felt it. A pull. A jolt of pure energy that made the world stand still. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. And that was the most terrifying thing I had ever felt. Chapter 2. A Friend's Secret Sigh. After that night in the woods, the world felt muted. The memory of him, the wolf, the man, those impossible golden eyes, was a secret I had to lock away. It had to be a hallucination, because the alternative? Too insane to consider. So I threw myself into work, into the bland safety of my normal human life. You've been a ghost, Arayna, Sivra said, her voice pulling me from my thoughts. We were sitting in our favorite little coffee shop, the smell of roasted beans a comforting blanket. Sivra was my opposite in every way. Where I was quiet, she was a spark of bright energy. Her laughter was loud, her hair a wild mane of red curls. She loved being the center of attention. She was my only real friend, my only family. Sorry, Siv, I murmured, stirring my latte. Just busy. She gave me a look, a sharp, knowing look. Too busy for your best friend? Or are you hiding from something? I forced a smile. How could I even begin to explain? So, I found a man who might be a monster, and I can't stop thinking about him. Yeah, right. She leaned forward, her own eyes sparkling with a secret. Well, I have news that will pull you right out of whatever funk you're in, she chirped. You know that guy I've been seeing? I nodded. She'd been vague about him, unusual for Sivra. It's serious, Arayna. Really serious. He's... She paused, searching for the word. Powerful. He's an alpha. The leader of his pack. My stomach did a nervous little flip. I knew Sivra was a werewolf. It was a part of her she didn't hide from me, and I accepted it. Because I loved her. But I always kept my distance from her. Other life. A world of instinct and violence I just didn't understand. Wow, Siv. An alpha? The alpha, she corrected, her smile wide and proud. And he's chosen me. We're having a celebration this weekend, a ceremony, and I need you there. Please? Her expression was so hopeful, so happy. How could I say no? This was everything she'd ever wanted. To be loved, to be important, to have a real place of power. It was my duty as her friend to support her, because she was the only one who had ever truly supported me. Of course, I said, the words feeling heavy. Of course, I'll be there. A knot of unease tightened in my gut. A quiet warning. An awful lot like the one I'd felt in the woods. Chapter 3. The Scent of a Lie Driving. The paved city roads gave way to packed dirt. It felt like crossing a border, into another country. The air itself changed, growing thick with the smell of pine, damp earth, and something else, something wild, electric, packlands. My little car felt small here, out of place. I shouldn't be this nervous. This was for Sivra. It was just a party. So why did my hands feel so slick on the steering wheel? Why did my heart feel like a trapped bird, beating, beating, beating against my ribs? Maybe because I couldn't get him out of my head. The man from the woods. Weeks had passed, but his image was burned into my mind. The raw power of him, the pain in those golden eyes, the shocking, impossible way his body had changed, and his scent. Rain and wild earth and something uniquely masculine. It still clung to the edges of my memory. A scent that promised both safety and danger, all at once. This is crazy. I'm a paramedic, a woman of science and logic. There had to be an explanation. A drug, a trick of the light. There had to be. Because my entire life was built on staying small, staying hidden, staying human. And that man, that thing, was not human. The unease grew stronger the deeper I drove. It was a feeling I knew well. The same feeling that had haunted my childhood, the one that made me build walls around myself. It was the feeling of a predator nearby, the feeling that something was watching. A question echoed in my mind, one I couldn't push away. What if it wasn't a hallucination? Whispering to herself. And what if I'm driving right into their den? I pulled up to a clearing filled with people, music and laughter spilled into the night. But it didn't ease the tension coiling in my stomach. Something was wrong here. I could feel it, like a trap. But I had made a promise to Sivra. I wouldn't break it. I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and walked towards the crowd, towards the music, towards the celebration that felt like a judgment. Chapter 4. A world shattered. The crowd was a living thing, a sea of bodies swaying to the rhythm of a deep primal drumbeat. Laughter and excited chatter filled the air, but beneath it all, a low hum of energy thrummed against my skin. It was intoxicating, it was terrifying. I pushed my way through, searching for Sivra's familiar red hair. Where was she? She'd told me to meet her here, at this celebration. My eyes scanned the clearing. Torches hissed on tall poles, casting flickering shadows that danced like ghosts. At the center of the clearing was a raised stone platform, empty for now. This felt more like a ritual than a party. The unease from my drive returned, colder this time, sharper. Then a hush fell over the crowd. Every head turned towards the platform, A man walked into the center of the torchlight, and the air crackled with power. He was tall, impossibly so. Broad shoulders tapered to a narrow waist, and he moved with the fluid grace of a predator. He was the most commanding presence I had ever seen. He was a king, and he was the man from the woods. My breath hitched, my blood ran cold. It couldn't be. It was a dream, a nightmare. It had to be. But there was no mistaking him. The same chiseled jaw, the same dark, unruly hair. I could feel his eyes, those burning gold eyes, even from here. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The man I'd saved? Sivra's mysterious alpha? No, it wasn't possible. Then Sivra stepped onto the platform. She looked beautiful, radiant in a simple white dress, and she walked right to his side. She looked up at him with pure adoration. A voice boomed through the clearing, an elder from the look of him. "Tonight we celebrate! Tonight Alpha Varric takes his Luna, Sivra!" The world didn't just tilt, it shattered. The ground fell away, and all I could hear was the frantic, panicked drumming of my own heart. This wasn't a celebration. This was a lie, a nightmare. And I was standing right in the middle of it.
Chapter 5. The scent of fate duty was a cage, a cold, iron cage, and tonight, I was rattling the bars. I stood on the Luna platform, the eyes of my pack fixed on me. They saw their alpha, their leader. They saw strength. They didn't see the man bound by a pact made before he was born. They didn't feel the dull haze of the spell the pack witches had woven, a spell to ensure I accepted my duty, to ensure I accepted her, Sivra, a good she-wolf, a strong ally from a neighboring pack. Her father's armies were essential to keeping our rivals at bay because our own numbers were dwindling. This union wasn't about love. It was about survival, a truth that sat like a stone in my gut. My wolf hated it. He paced behind my eyes, dull and miserable under the weight of the spell. The elder spoke the ancient words, his voice a low drone. I played my part. I smiled. I nodded. Inside, I was hollow. This was my life now. A gray, endless path of responsibility without passion, without a true mate. Then, a scent hit me. Rain-soaked earth, wildflowers, and something else. Something that was purely her. My head snapped up. The spell in my mind fizzled like water on a fire. My wolf roared to life, a savage, desperate howl of pure recognition. Mate. My eyes scanned the crowd, a frantic, desperate search. And I found her, standing near the edge of the clearing, her face pale with shock, her wide, beautiful eyes locked on mine, the paramedic, the human woman who had saved my life, the woman whose scent had haunted my every waking moment. She wasn't human. No human could call to my soul like this. She was mine. She was my fated mate. And I was standing on a platform, about to bind myself to another woman, right in front of her. The realization was a physical blow, a betrayal so deep it stole the air from my lungs. The elder's voice faded to a meaningless buzz. The whole world narrowed to her face. My wolf clawed at the inside of my chest, screaming a single agonized word. Mine. Mine. Mine.
Chapter 6. A Gilded Cage. The world was a blur of noise and motion. People were cheering, celebrating. But all I felt was the ice in my veins. I had to get out, had to escape. I turned, ready to flee back to my car, back to my safe, human life. But a hand closed on my arm. "Arayna, there you are." It was Sivra. Her face was flushed with excitement, her eyes shining with a victor's light. She looked different. The warmth I knew was still there, but it was coated with a new layer of authority, of ownership. "Sivra, what is going on?" My voice was a choked whisper. "Isn't it wonderful?" she breathed, pulling me into a one-armed hug. "Varric is everything I ever wanted, and now, I'm his Luna." The words felt like a slap. My heart ached with a pain so sharp it was hard to breathe. This wasn't her friend. This wasn't the girl who was like a sister. This was a stranger, wearing her face. You didn't tell me," I managed, pulling away from her. "You didn't tell me it was him." Sivra's smile tightened just a fraction. A flicker of something cold crossed her features. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Besides, it all happened so fast. It was fate." Fate. The word was a lie, and it tasted like poison. Before I could respond, her grip on my arm tightened. It wasn't friendly anymore. It was a warning. "You look pale, Arayna. The excitement must be too much for you." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes were hard. "You should stay here for a few days, in the pack house. I'll have a room prepared for you. We need to catch up properly." It wasn't a question. It was a command. I was a human in a den of wolves, her wolves now, and she was making it very clear that she was the one in charge. My best friend, my only friend, and she had just locked me in a beautiful, gilded cage. The hook was set, because now my escape was not just from a bad party, but from a powerful new Luna who clearly saw me as a threat. Chapter 7. A Prisoner in White. The room was beautiful. That was the cruelest part. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The bed was soft, the wood furniture polished to a high gleam. It was a luxurious guest room, a beautiful cage. I'd been here for 3 days. 3 days of walking on eggshells, of polite smiles and empty conversations. Sivra had been attentive. Too attentive. Her presence was a constant weight, a reminder of my status here. A guest? A friend? A prisoner? And then there was the pain. It started as a dull ache in my chest, a phantom pain I'd dismissed as stress, but it was growing, sharpening, a constant throb that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. It felt like a deep internal bruise, a soul-deep loneliness that had become a physical agony. Sivra found me staring out the window, a cup of tea growing cold in my hands. "You're bored, aren't you?" she said, her voice bright and cheerful. It sounded fake. "I feel terrible keeping you cooped up in here. I have an idea." My stomach tightened. I didn't like her ideas anymore. "The pack ward could use another healer," she continued, ignoring my silence. "Especially one with your human skills. It would give you something to do. A way to contribute. You'd be a great help." She was framing it as a choice, as a favor. But we both knew what it was. A leash. A way to keep me busy, to keep me integrated, to keep me under her watch. It was a brilliant move, because she knew I couldn't refuse. My need to heal, to be useful, was a part of me she knew how to exploit. To refuse would be to admit I was a prisoner. To accept was to tighten the collar around my own neck. "Okay," I heard myself say, the word tasting like ash. "I'll do it." Her smile was dazzling. It didn't reach her eyes. "Wonderful. I'll have someone show you the way." As she left, the ache in my chest flared, sharp and sudden. It was a warning. A desperate, silent scream from a part of me I didn't understand. This wasn't just a job. It was a new level of the game she was playing, and I was moving deeper into her territory.
Chapter 8. A Necessary Proximity. The council meeting had been a nightmare. Questions, demands, whispers about my new Luna and the haste of our union. I held my ground, projecting an aura of unshakable confidence I did not feel. My life had become a performance, a lie I had to live every single second. The only truth was the pain, a constant, sharp agony that centered behind my ribs. It was the mate bond, the one to my true mate, screaming in protest. It tore at me whenever I was near Sivra, a physical punishment for my betrayal. My wolf was a caged beast, snarling and clawing at my control, his fury a ceaseless storm. And the center of that storm was her. Arayna. From my office window I could see the path leading to the medical ward. I watched her walk there, her steps hesitant but determined. I had arranged it myself, of course. I'd put the idea in Sivra's head, framing it as a way to keep her human friend occupied. It was a dangerous gamble because Sivra's jealousy was a poison I could already smell in the air. But I had no choice. I had to have her close, not just because the pain eased slightly when she was near, not just because my wolf settled at the sight of her. I had to have her close because I needed to protect her. Sivra was not the simple, happy-go-lucky wolf she pretended to be. Her ambition was a sharp, hungry thing. I saw the way she looked at Arayna, with a possessive, suspicious glint in her eye. She saw a rival, a loose end. I couldn't let Arayna out of my sight. Placing her in the ward was the only way. It was a place of healing, a place of sanctuary, a place where my eyes, and the eyes of those loyal to me, could watch over her. My wolf rumbled in my chest, a low, frustrated growl. "Closer," he demanded. "Protect. Claim." "Patience," I murmured to the empty room, my fist clenching on the windowsill. The game was just beginning, and I would burn my own pack to the ground before I let anyone harm her. She was the only real thing left in my world of lies.
Chapter 9. The Alpha's Rage. The pack training ground smelled of sweat, dirt, and aggression. It was an intimidating place, but working in the ward was isolating. I came out here on my breaks just to feel the sun and remind myself there was a world outside those sterile white walls. I was watching a sparring session, the crack of bodies hitting mats, a brutal kind of music. "Enjoying the show, human?" The voice was a low sneer. I turned to see a warrior named Kale. He was one of Sivra's cousins, big and brutish, with eyes that held a permanent smirk. He'd made it his personal mission to remind me that I didn't belong. "Just observing," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "You should be careful," he said, stepping closer. "Things get rough out here. An ordinary human could get hurt." His words were a clear threat. Before I could answer, a stray fighter stumbled back, knocking a practice sword from a rack. It spun through the air, end over end. Time slowed down. I saw it coming. A blur of wood and steel heading right for me. I braced for the impact, but it never came. There was a sound. A deep, guttural snarl that ripped through the air and silenced every other noise. It was a sound of pure, unrestrained fury. Veyric. He moved faster than I thought possible. One moment he was across the grounds, the next he was a wall of muscle in front of me. He didn't catch the sword. He simply batted it out of the air, sending it clattering harmlessly to the ground. His focus wasn't on the sword. It was on Kale. Veyric's eyes were no longer just gold. They were blazing infernos. His hand shot out, grabbing Kale by the throat and slamming him against the nearest training post. The wood groaned in protest. "If you ever let harm come to her again." Veyric's voice was a low, terrifying growl, each word dripping with menace. "I will rip your throat out, with my teeth." The world stood still. Every wolf on the field was frozen, their eyes wide with shock. They weren't looking at Kale, pinned and choking. They were looking at me, and in their eyes I saw a question, a dawning, dangerous realization. Veyric let Kyle drop to the ground, gasping. He turned, and his blazing eyes met mine. The rage was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate concern that shook me to my core. Chapter 10. Silver and Flame. The silence on the training grounds was a living thing, a suffocating blanket of shock and suspicion. After Veyric's outburst, no one would meet my eyes. They didn't look at me with simple curiosity anymore. They looked at me with fear, with resentment, like I was a disease that had just infected their pack, their alpha. That evening, at the communal dinner, the tension was so thick I could barely breathe. I sat alone, a pariah at a feast. Across the hall, Sivra sat beside Veyric, her posture rigid, her smile a brittle, painted-on thing. Veyric wasn't even looking at her. His golden eyes kept finding mine across the crowded room, filled with a desperate, unspoken message I couldn't understand. Sivra saw it. Of course she saw it. I watched her stand, her movements jerky with suppressed rage. She walked towards me, a glass of wine in her hand. Her path was a deliberate, winding one, meant to look casual, meant to end with me. "Arayna," she said, her voice dangerously sweet. "You've barely eaten. Are you feeling all right?" She was standing too close. Her shadow fell over me. I started to stand up to excuse myself, to just run. "I'm fine. Her foot shot out. It was subtle. So subtle no one else would see it as anything but an accident. I stumbled. My hands flew out to catch myself, but there was nothing to grab. She didn't just trip me, she shoved me, hard. I fell against the sharp edge of a stone hearth. Pain, white-hot and blinding, shot up my arm. I cried out, clutching my hand to my chest. Blood, warm and sticky, welled up from a deep gash in my palm, dripping onto the cold stone floor. And then, the world changed. The pain from the cut was swallowed by a different kind of fire. It started in my blood. A strange silvery heat that raced through my veins. The air grew cold. A silver-black aura, like smoke and moonlight, flared around me, visible only to the wolves in the room, whose eyes all went wide with terror. The scent of ozone and burning herbs filled the air. My scent. Varric's head snapped towards me. His control shattered completely. His eyes widened, not with concern, but with earth-shattering, soul-deep recognition. He didn't just see me anymore. He finally saw what I was. Chapter 11. A Shared Agony. The silver fire in my veins became a roaring inferno. It was too much. Too hot. A power I couldn't control. Then, a new pain slammed into me. A crushing weight on my chest, so intense it drove the air from my lungs. It was a physical manifestation of every lonely, broken feeling I'd ever had. 1,000 times worse than the cut on my hand. My vision swam. I was drowning. Drowning in an agony that had no source and no end. I saw Varric across the room, his face a mask of horror. He was clutching his own chest, his knuckles white. He looked like he felt it too.
The moment her blood hit the stone, the moment her true scent, shadow flame, erupted into the air, the spell in my head didn't just flicker. It incinerated. The truth slammed into me. She wasn't just my mate. She was a shadow flame wolf, a legend, a myth made real. And then the bond, raw, awakened and furious, snapped. The false connection to Sivra became a chain of pure agony. A white-hot poker seared my chest from the inside out. It was the bond, screaming at me for being near the wrong female. Every second beside Sivra was now a torment beyond words. I stumbled back from her, a guttural roar of pain tearing from my throat. I had to get away from Sivra. I had to get to her.
Through the haze of pain, I saw him moving. He wasn't walking. He was stalking. He pushed through the frozen crowd, his eyes locked on mine. He ignored Sivra's cry of his name. He ignored the gasps of his pack. He reached me, his face pale and slick with sweat. He knelt in front of me, his hands hovering over me, afraid to touch. The moment he was near, the crushing weight on my chest lessened. Just a fraction. It was still there, a terrible, tearing pain. But it was bearable. His presence was the only thing holding me together.
Being near her was like the first breath of air after nearly drowning. The agony receded to a survivable torment. I looked into her terrified, pain-filled eyes. I started, but what could I say? I'm sorry I broke the world? I wrapped one arm around her, pulling her up. You're with me. I growled to the stunned room. And without another word, I swept her into my arms and carried her away from the wreckage of my own making. The shared pain, a terrible binding chain between us. Chapter 12. Under the guise of training. The pack was a hornet's nest of whispers and fear. They spoke of the human who bled shadows. They spoke of their Luna, scorned, and they spoke of their alpha's terrifying, inexplicable rage. I let them whisper. It was the perfect cover. 2 days later, I found Arayna in the ward's small garden, her hand bandaged, her face pale. The ache in my chest was a constant, vicious reminder of my failure. It only subsided to a dull roar when I was near her. "The attack on the training grounds cannot happen again," I stated, my voice low and formal. It was the only tone I could manage. Anything else would betray the storm raging inside me. "Your skills are human. Your body is fragile. I will train you myself." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You'll train me? You're the alpha. And you are a guest under my protection," I countered, the words feeling like lies on my tongue. She was so much more than that. "It is my duty. We will start now." I led her to a private training ring, hidden behind a grove of ancient pines. The air here was still, quiet, alone. Finally, alone. The relief was so sharp it almost brought me to my knees. "Show me your fighting stance," I commanded, my voice rougher than I intended. She moved awkwardly, a parody of the warrior she had seen. It was endearing. It was terrifying. She was so vulnerable. I stepped behind her, the need to touch her a physical hunger. "No. Like this." My voice was a murmur. I placed my hands on her waist, my thumbs brushing against her hips. A jolt, pure electricity, shot through both of us. Her breath hitched. My wolf purred, a low, rumbling sound of contentment deep in my chest. This was right. Her in my arms. "Your feet," I said, trying to focus. "Wider apart. For balance." I gently nudged her leg with my own. Every point of contact was a spark. Every breath she took filled my senses with her scent. Rain, wildflowers, and that intoxicating hint of shadow flame. The pain in my chest faded to a sweet, distant ache. This wasn't training. This was torture. It was the only way I could be near her. The only way I could survive. But how long could I touch her like this, under the guise of training, before I gave in and claimed what was mine?
Chapter 13, A Test of Trust. The morning air was cold, but the tension in the pack house was colder. I was on my way to the ward, my steps quiet in the pre-dawn gloom, when I saw her. Sivra. She was leaving Varric's private wing, a smug, satisfied smile playing on her lips. She stretched like a cat that had just lapped up a bowl of cream, making sure the few early risers in the hall saw her, making sure I saw her. My human heart, the one that still remembered our friendship, felt a familiar, sharp sting. It was a blatant, calculated performance, a power play. "See? He is mine. He comes to my bed. You are nothing." But then, something else stirred within me, a quiet, cold stillness. It was a new feeling, a new voice that wasn't my own panicked thoughts. It was the whisper of my wolf, the shadow flame, now awake and watchful. And it was not fooled. "Lie," it murmured in the back of my mind. A simple, certain truth. His scent is not on her, not in the way of a mate, not in the way of a lover. My human emotions were a storm of hurt and jealousy. But my wolf was calm. It saw the truth behind the lie. It sensed Sivra's desperation. This wasn't an act of a cherished mate. It was the desperate gambit of a woman losing her grip. I ducked back into the shadows before she could see me, my heart pounding a strange, new rhythm. This was a test. Not just of my strength, but of his. Varric had spent our training sessions dancing on the edge of a confession, his eyes full of a silent, desperate apology. He was in pain. I knew that now. But would he tell me the truth? Would he have the courage to unravel this lie on his own? The old Arayna would have run. The old Arayna would have confronted Sivra, dissolved into tears, and been easily defeated. But I was not the old Arayna. Something else was growing in her place. Something patient, something powerful, and it was willing to wait and watch. Because the truth, I was beginning to learn, had a way of clawing itself into the light. I would give him the chance to prove he was the man I saw in his eyes, not the one complicit in this lie. Chapter 14, An Unbearable Choice. The pain was no longer a dull ache. It was a living thing, a creature with claws and teeth that was tearing me apart from the inside out. Every time Sivra walked past me, every time she touched Varric's arm in a show of ownership, the creature inside my chest ripped and tore at my soul. It was the mate bond. I understood that now. It was a beautiful, magical connection that had been twisted into a weapon against me, a weapon against us. I couldn't sleep. I could barely eat. During my shifts in the ward, my hands would tremble so badly I had to stop treating patients. How could I heal others when I was so fundamentally broken myself? I was a ghost haunting the pack house, growing weaker, paler, more transparent by the day. I looked at my reflection in the window one afternoon. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her eyes were hollow, her skin stretched tight over her bones. I was dying. Slowly, painfully, I was dying here. And in that moment, a decision formed, not from fear, not from anger, but from a deep, primal need for survival. I had to leave. It wasn't about Varric anymore. It wasn't about Sivra or the lies or the betrayal. It was about me. It was about choosing to live. The hope that Varric would fix this was a sweet poison, but I couldn't afford to drink it any longer. I had to save myself. That night, I waited until the moon was high and the great house was silent. I didn't pack a bag, I didn't take anything, possessions didn't matter. Only freedom did. I slipped out a side door, a shadow moving through other shadows. My bare feet were silent on the cool earth as I ran, past the training grounds, past the edge of the village. The scent of the wild forest called to me, promising escape, promising life. I just had to make it to the border. The pain in my chest was a roaring fire now, screaming at me with every step I took away from him, but I pushed through it. Freedom was so close. I could taste it. I could see the line of ancient pines that marked the edge of the packlands. I ran faster, my lungs burning, my soul aching. Just a few more feet. Chapter 15. A desperate confession. The border. Freedom. My feet flew over the last stretch of ground, hope surging through me. I was going to make it. I was going to be free. A shadow detached itself from the trees in front of me. It was huge, a wall of darkness and muscle that blocked my path completely. A massive black wolf stood there, its golden eyes glowing in the moonlight, pinning me in place. Varric.
The moment she ran, I felt it. The bond stretched thin, thin, until it felt like it was about to snap. The agony was blinding. I shifted without thought, my wolf taking over, driven by a single, terrified instinct. Don't let her leave. I cut through the forest, a blur of black fur, and got to the border just ahead of her. Seeing her there, so desperate to escape me, it broke something inside my soul. I couldn't let her go. Losing her now would be a death sentence.
He shifted right there in front of me, the sound of cracking bones and tearing flesh, a horrifying symphony of his pain. He stood before me, naked and desperate, his face etched with a torment that mirrored my own. "Don't," he choked out, taking a stumbling step towards me. "Please, Arayna, don't leave me."
The words came spilling out, a raw, broken torrent of truth I had held back for too long. The ceremony, it was a lie. A pact, a spell to dull my senses so I would accept it. I had to do it for my pack's survival. I thought I had no choice. I took another step, my hands outstretched. But then I saw you, and it all shattered. This pain, I feel it too. Every second I am near her, it's like fire in my veins. You are my mate, Arayna. My fated mate. And I am breaking.
His confession hung in the air between us, raw and real. Every word resonated with the truth my wolf had already sensed. He wasn't a willing traitor. He was a king in a cage. My anger warred with a wave of reluctant sympathy. His pain was as real as mine. "I am planning a ceremony," he whispered, his voice cracking, "under the next blood moon. A ritual to publicly break the false mark, to break the spell. But I need you to stay. Please, give me a chance to fix this, to choose you." I looked into his golden eyes, swimming with regret and a sliver of hope. I had come here to save myself, but maybe, just maybe, the only way to do that was to stay. "One chance, Varric," I said, my voice quiet but strong. "You get one chance. Don't make me regret this." Chapter 16, A Lock and a Lie. In the days that followed Varric's confession at the border, a fragile truce settled over us. We continued our training sessions, tense, quiet moments, charged with unspoken promises and the ever-present ache of our damaged bond. The pack watched us. Sivra watched us, her eyes full of a venomous, cold fury. The air was thick with the feeling of a coming storm. We were all just waiting for the blood moon, waiting for our one chance to fix everything. But the storm broke sooner than we expected. An alarm, a howling, mournful siren, shattered the evening quiet. Shouts erupted outside. The scent of smoke and blood drifted on the wind. Rival pack. An attack. Chaos exploded. Warriors shifted, their roars shaking the very foundations of the pack house. I ran for the medical ward, my place, my duty, but a figure blocked my path. Sivra. Her face was a mask of false concern. "Arayna, it's not safe. You have to hide." "The ward needs me," I protested, trying to push past her. "No!" Her grip on my arm was like iron. "Varric would never forgive me if something happened to you. There's a safe room, a storage cellar. You'll be protected there until this is over." She wasn't asking. She was dragging me down a dark hallway, away from the sounds of the fight, away from where I could help. My mind screamed that this was wrong, but she was too strong, her panic too convincing. She shoved me into a small dark space that smelled of dust and old herbs. "Stay here. Don't make a sound. It's the only way to keep you safe." Before I could argue, she slammed the heavy oak door shut. I heard the sickening final thud of a heavy bar sliding into place, locking me in. The sounds of battle faded, muffled by stone and earth. I was alone. In the dark, trapped. This wasn't protection. This was a cage. Sivra hadn't saved me from the rival pack. She had buried me, leaving me helpless while the fate of the man I loved was decided in blood and fire outside. And a cold, terrifying thought slithered into my mind. If our pack lost, no one would ever know I was here.
Chapter 17. Feral Fear. The world was red, red with the blood of my enemies and red with the fury of my wolf. The rival pack had breached our western wall, a foolish, suicidal move. I was a whirlwind of claws and teeth, an alpha defending his territory, and my warriors fought with me, a seamless unit of death. We were winning. The victory was inevitable, but a part of me wasn't on the battlefield. A part of me was screaming a single name. Arayna, my bond, our bond, was a frantic, terrified buzz beneath my skin. I couldn't feel her. I couldn't scent her on the air. She wasn't in the ward. I had checked. She wasn't in her room. The connection, which had been a constant source of pain and comfort, was now muted, distant, like she was miles away. Or worse. Panic, a cold, sharp terror that no warrior could inflict, sliced through my battle rage. "Arayna!" My roar was lost in the din of the fight, my strategy, my duty as alpha. It all evaporated. None of it mattered. Not the pack, not the war, not victory, only her. My control snapped. The man disappeared. The alpha disappeared. Only the wolf remained. Mate is gone. The beast inside me howled. Find her. Now. I abandoned the fight. I ignored the calls of my beta, the shocked stares of my warriors. I turned from the battle and launched myself at the pack house, a feral force of nature driven by pure primal fear. I was no longer an alpha leading his pack. I was a desperate creature searching for its other half. I tore through hallways, splintering doors with my claws, my howls shaking the rafters. Her scent was faint, lost, buried. The thought of her, hurt or trapped or gone, was a pain far worse than any physical wound. It was a pain that would unmake me. I would tear this entire house down, stone by stone, until I found her. Because a world without her in it was not a world I was willing to live in. I would not lose her again. Chapter 18. The Quiet Confession. The scent was strongest here, faint, terrified, behind this door, this damned barred door. With a final agonized roar, I ripped the heavy oak from its hinges. The room beyond was dark, but she was there, a small trembling shape in the corner. Safe. Alive. The feral rage receded, leaving behind a relief so profound it felt like a physical blow. I was shaking, my body battered, my energy spent. But none of it mattered. I stumbled into the room, shifting back into my human form, not caring that I was wounded and covered in dirt. I only cared that she was breathing.
The door exploded inwards, and for a second I thought an enemy had found me. But it was him. Varric. He looked wrecked. A deep gash bled on his arm, and his face was pale with exhaustion. But his eyes were only for me. The fierce, feral alpha was gone. In his place was a man so full of raw, vulnerable relief that it made my heart ache. He didn't say a word. He just came to me, his movements slow and careful, and gently helped me to my feet. He didn't lead me to the ward. He led me through the quiet, damaged halls to his own private wing, to his room, the Alpha's den.
I sat her on the edge of my bed. The silence was deafening after the chaos of the battle. My hands trembled as I opened a medical kit, my own private stash. I cleaned the scrapes on her arms from her fall, my touch as gentle as I could make it. I had almost lost her. The thought was a black hole that threatened to swallow me whole. My control, my power, my duty. It was all meaningless without her. She was the anchor. She was the reason.
He finished tending to my arms, but he didn't pull away. He knelt before me, taking my hands in his. His head was bowed, his shoulders slumped with a weariness that went beyond the battle. "When I couldn't find you," he whispered, his voice thick and broken. "When I couldn't feel you, I thought, Arayna, I almost lost my mind." He looked up, and his golden eyes were swimming with unshed tears. "Losing this battle would have meant nothing. Losing you would have been the end of everything." In that moment, he wasn't an alpha. He wasn't a king. He was just a man, confessing his deepest fear to the woman he loved. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my soul, that our fight was just beginning.
Chapter 19. The Unbinding. The night of the blood moon was here. A heavy crimson light bled across the sky, painting the world in shades of rust and wine. It was a light of endings and new beginnings. My entire pack was gathered in the ceremonial clearing, their faces tense and uncertain. They stood because I was their alpha and I had commanded it, but I could smell their fear, their confusion. In the center of the clearing, Sivra stood opposite me. Her face was a mask of cold, defiant fury. She believed this ritual would fail. She believed the ancient laws would uphold our fraudulent bond. Standing near her was a familiar agony, but tonight, my purpose was a shield against the pain. To my right stood my beta, Kalen, his expression unreadable. To my left stood Arayna. She was pale, but her eyes held a new, steady fire. She was trusting me, and I would not fail her. "I, Alpha Varric," I began, my voice booming across the silent clearing, "stand before my pack and before the eyes of the moon goddess herself. I come to right a wrong. The bond declared between myself and Sivra was formed under the influence of a corrupt spell. It is not a true mate bond, and I reject it." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Sivra's face twisted in rage. "I invoke the ancient rite of unbinding," I roared, raising my arms to the blood-red moon. "By my blood and my breath, I sever this false tie. I sever this political chain. I sever this lie." As I spoke the final word, the air ripped open. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling, a tear in the fabric of the world. A wave of cold, rotting magic washed over us. It didn't come from Sivra. It came from the shadows behind my beta, Kalen. His lips twisted into a cruel smirk as robed figures, witches, stepped out of the darkness. "You cannot undo what has been done, Varric," Kalen sneered. "This pack needs new leadership." From the tear in the air, something began to crawl forth. A creature made of solidified nightmare. A shifting mass of shadows and claws and too many teeth. A shadow beast. And its dead, empty eyes were fixed on me.
Chapter 20. No more fear. The shadow beast was horror made real. It moved with a disjointed, unnatural gait, its claws leaving deep gouges in the stone platform. The pack screamed. Some ran. Others stood frozen in terror. It was a creature of pure, negative energy, and its very presence felt like it was sucking the life out of the air. It ignored the panicked crowd. It ignored the traitorous beta. It had only one target: Varric. He was momentarily weakened by the ritual. His focus split between the unbinding and this new, terrifying threat. He pushed me behind him, placing his body between me and the monster, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He was ready to die for me. And in that instant, everything became clear. All my life I had been afraid. Afraid of the power simmering in my blood. Afraid of the monster I thought I was. I had built my entire life around hiding, around being small, around being a victim. But the woman who loved this man, the woman he loved back, could not be a victim. She had to be a warrior. The fear didn't just vanish. It was burned away, eclipsed by a fierce, protective love so powerful it was a physical force. My blood turned to lava in my veins. The quiet whisper of my wolf was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. Varric was my mate, my other half, my king. And this creature, this abomination born of betrayal, would not touch him. The shadow beast lunged, its claws extended, aiming for Varric's throat. I didn't think. I just acted. My legs were moving, carrying me forward, not away. I ran past Varric's outstretched arm as he tried to shield me. I ran towards the monster, towards the gaping maw and the soulless eyes. With a defiant scream that was half human, half howl, I threw myself in front of him, my arms spread wide, ready to take the blow that was meant for my mate. I would be his shield. Chapter 21. The Shadow and the Flame. I braced for the impact, for the tearing claws, for the final searing pain. But it never came. The moment the shadow beast's energy touched my skin, it felt not like a blow, but like a key turning in a lock. The silver fire that had been simmering in my blood for weeks erupted. It was a glorious, cleansing agony. My human form dissolved in a torrent of silver-black flame. Bones stretched and reformed, not with a sickening crack, but with a feeling of rightness, of finally coming home. I landed on 4 paws, the world sharper, sense clearer, my body humming with a power I had only ever dreamed of in nightmares. But this wasn't a nightmare. It was an awakening.
I roared in denial as she threw herself in front of me. But my roar turned into a gasp of pure awe. She didn't die. She bloomed. A vortex of silver and black fire engulfed her, and from it emerged a wolf. My breath caught in my chest. She was a sleek, powerful creature, her fur the color of polished obsidian, but it was streaked with veins of pure, liquid silver that glowed with their own internal light. Flames of the same silver fire danced around her paws and tipped her tail. A shadow flame wolf, the legend, the myth, made real. And she was the most beautiful, terrifying, magnificent thing I had ever seen. She was not a victim to be protected. She was a goddess of righteous fury. My queen.
I turned my head and met Varric's wide, golden eyes. I saw no fear in them, only reverence, only love. A low, rumbling purr vibrated in my chest, a sound of pure contentment, of perfect recognition. Mate, my wolf and I were finally one. I was no longer afraid of the monster. I was the monster, and I would use my power to protect what was mine.
Arayna, my Arayna, in all her impossible glory, let out a challenging snarl at the shadow beast, the silver flames around her flaring brighter. She took a step, and I fell into step beside her, shifting into my own wolf form. We stood side by side, a black wolf of shadow and a black wolf of flame. Two halves of a whole. No longer a broken alpha and a hidden wolf. We were a true alpha and Luna. And together we turned to face the darkness, ready to fight for our pack, for our bond, and for our future. The battle had just begun.
Chapter 22. A Symphony of Fury. We moved as one, a symphony of fury and grace. The shadow beast was chaos, but we were order. It was a creature of singular hate, but we were two halves of a whole, bound by a love that was now a weapon. My shadow flame. It didn't just burn. It purified. Where my silvery fire touched the beast, its shadowy form dissolved like smoke in the wind. I was its perfect opposite, its natural predator. I would lunge, a blur of silver-streaked darkness, and my flames would sear its hide, creating an opening.
And where she created an opening, I attacked. My wolf was pure physical power, a battering ram of muscle and bone. While her flames weakened the creature's form, I used my strength to break its substance. I would slam into it, my claws and teeth finding purchase where moments before there had been nothing but shadow. We didn't need to speak. We didn't need a plan. The bond thrummed between us, a perfect, silent communication. She would feint left, and I would already be moving right. I would tear at its leg and she would already be lunging for its throat. It was a dance of beautiful, lethal violence. The beast let out a final, soundless scream as I sank my flaming jaws into its neck, and Varric tore out its shadowy heart. It imploded, dissolving into a cloud of foul-smelling dust that settled on the stone platform. As it vanished, a chain of light around Sivra's neck, a chain I hadn't noticed before, shattered into 1,000 pieces. The false bond was broken. She collapsed to the ground, unconscious. At the same moment, the traitorous Beta, Kalen, staggered back, a look of pure shock on his face as the witches behind him shrieked and vanished into the night. The power holding his coup together was gone.
The battle was won, but the fight was not over. I shifted back to my human form, Arayna shifting gracefully beside me. I ignored my wounds. I ignored the gasps of my pack. My eyes found Kalen's. He had betrayed me. He had threatened my mate. He had tried to destroy our pack from within. There would be no mercy. "Seize him," I commanded, my voice ringing with the absolute authority of the Alpha. My loyal warriors, their shock turning to righteous anger, surged forward. Kalen was surrounded, trapped. His plot, like the beast he had summoned, had turned to dust. The night of blood was over, and the dawn was ours. Chapter 23, Exile and Unity. In the aftermath of the battle, a new order settled over the pack. Kalen and the handful of warriors loyal to him were imprisoned, their betrayal exposed for all to see. The pack, once fractured by suspicion, was now united in their loyalty to Varric, and to my surprise, in their awe of me. They no longer looked at me as a human interloper, but as the legendary Shadow Flame, their alpha's other half. It was a strange, heady feeling. Before Kalen was taken to the cells, Sivra was brought before us. The broken spell had left her drained and fragile. The venomous, power-hungry Luna was gone. In her place was a flicker of the girl I once called my friend. "He promised me everything," she whispered, not looking at Varric but at me. Her eyes were filled with a hollow regret. "Kalen. He said the spell would make Varric love me, that we would rule together. I was a pawn, a foolish, ambitious pawn in his game." "You still made your choice, Sivra," Varric said, his voice cold and unforgiving. "You locked my mate in a cellar to die." "I know," she said, tears finally tracing paths through the dirt on her cheeks. and I will accept my punishment. Banishment is what I deserve. She took a step closer to me, her voice dropping lower. But know this, Arayna. Kalen was not the only one who wanted this alliance. My father. His ambition is greater than my own. He has allies in other packs who resent Varric's power. Winning here tonight does not mean the war is over. Be careful. It was a final, cryptic warning, a seed of a future threat. I watched as she was escorted to the border, her exile beginning immediately. I felt no triumph, only a sad, quiet closure on a friendship that had turned to poison. Varric came to stand beside me, his presence a warm, solid comfort. He had dealt with the traitors. He had secured his pack. He had faced down the darkness. Now, there was only one thing left to do. He had to mend the bond between him and his pack, and the one between us. Our future was waiting, and for the first time, I was ready to claim it alongside him. Chapter 24, A Mark of Flame and Shadow. The victory celebration was a wild, joyous affair. The pack, free from the weight of betrayal and the threat of war, was reborn. They howled and danced around a massive bonfire, their spirits soaring. I stood beside Varric, no longer an outsider, but a part of the whole. For the first time, I felt like I belonged.
Watching her among my people, seeing the respect and awe in their eyes as they looked at her, it filled the hollow places inside me. She was my queen in every way. The battle was won, the traitors were dealt with, but my final promise remained. I had to make this right. All of it. In front of everyone. Leaving her side, I walked to the center of the clearing and held up a hand for silence. The celebration quieted, all eyes turning to me.
My heart began to pound when Varric moved to the center of the clearing. What was he doing? He turned and his gaze found mine. It was a look of such profound love, of such deep and utter devotion, that it took my breath away. And then, he did something that made the entire pack gasp as one. He knelt, the Alpha King, knelt before me in the dirt and ash of their victory.
I failed you, I said, my voice clear and strong, echoing for all to hear. My duty blinded me to my fate. I brought you pain when I should have brought you only love. I am sorry, Arayna. I am sorry for my weakness. I held out my hand. But I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. Arayna, my fated mate, my shadow flame, will you be my Luna? Will you rule by my side, as my equal?
Tears streamed down my face, but they were tears of pure joy. I walked towards him, my steps sure and steady, and placed my hand in his. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Varric, always. He rose and pulled me close. This was our moment. He lowered his head to my neck, and I braced myself for the claiming mark. He bit down, and a jolt of pure energy shot through me. My shadow flame power roared to life, a vortex of silver-black fire erupting around us. For a heartbeat, it was wild, untamed power. But then, it softened, pouring into the bond, sealing it not just with a mark of teeth, but with a mark of pure magic. We were bound, body, soul, and flame. Our new life, together, had just begun.